Hey, this is Jay Underwood. I play Johnny Storm, the Human Torch in the original Fantastic Four production, here to talk about Doomed, and you are listening to Without Your Head.
Well, welcome to the station of decapitation Without Your Head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by the original Dr. Doom and the writer, director, and actor in Welcome to the Men's Group, Joseph Culp. It's very cool to have you here.
Thanks, Neil. Pleasure to be here. You're a captain?
A captain, did you say?
I thought you said you were a decapitated captain. Anyway,
right. It was the station of decapitation, but I do like the captain.
The station. Okay. Yeah. The captain of decapitation. How about that?
I like that.
Or decapitated captain.
I like that. I think I'll add that to the nicknames.
Good. I've already made a point.
So right. For people not aware, can you give them an idea of what Welcome to the Men's Group is about?
Surely. So, all the folks out there, Welcome to the Men's Group is a new feature film. It's a comedy drama about a modern-day men's group. And men's groups, some men run screaming from the idea, are quite an amazing thing to me. I would say men's groups are, as I said, a modern day sort of phenomenon that grew up in the last 30 years or so, I would say, where men get together to actually talk in a supportive way about their lives, about their feelings, about, much in the way that you would expect, I suppose, women to share things, but men ordinarily do not share those kinds of things. They don't share their fears. They don't share what's really going on. Most of our culture, permits us and encourages us just to drink and watch sports. And so these guys are in a men's group, and that's different. That's where you get together and eat some food, and then you sit down, and it's more of like a spiritual support group where you actually talk about what's going on with Joe and Neil and Fred and Carl, and people share about their lives. And this movie is about, on one particular day in the life of this group, things get a new guy is brought into the group. He's the newcomer. And of course, whenever you bring a newcomer in a group, everyone starts behaving badly. And so things kind of spin out of control in terms of, people trigger each other, they get into conflict, and their whole very therapeutic forum kind of descends into chaos. And some things are really tested about the group. How much they trust each other, how far are they willing to go to support each other. And it goes some places that are quite surprising, that you don't see every day in movies. It's an ensemble piece with 8 actors, incredible actors. Stephen Tobolowsky, who everybody knows from a million different movies and TV shows like Groundhog Day and Californication, and the Goldbergs, the great Timothy Bottoms, who was a major star in the 70s with Last Picture Show and The Paper Chase. David Clonin, who's been in Being There and The Thing by John Carpenter. Really wonderful ensemble of actors, and they're quite wonderful. And yeah, so it's a new kind of movie, and it's out now. Just came out on VOD, and so you can watch it at a moment's notice on Google and iTunes and Amazon and wherever you get your movies. And I have a whole history with men's groups. That's why I co-wrote the film with a partner of mine, and we put it together, and then I directed it. And it's a very unusual piece, and I think people would be intrigued to see what goes on in the life of a men's group, what really happens there. And I may add very quickly that women love the film because they love to see men actually sharing feelings or trying to, which is something most women are very sorry for. So that's the movie right now. Welcome to the Men's Group.
Yeah, so I didn't know that you had like a background in actual men's club. I was going to ask about that because it seemed like it was something that was personal to you. How long have you been part of that scene?
So, yeah, I first got interested in men's work, as they call it, or men's groups, quite a while ago. I would say, way over 20 years. There was a moment in the early 90s when this started coming a little bit more into the foreground, that men were doing these kinds of groups and they sought out this kind of support for each other. And there was a famous book by an American poet named Robert Bly. It was called Iron John, and it was all about men and storytelling and mythology, and that men, he was saying, needed to own their grief and their wounds, and they could find through storytelling and ritualized gathering a kind of new spirituality about themselves. And I started getting interested in it then. I came from a background where I was hungry for that in a certain way. It's a lot about mentoring, that men need mentors, and our culture doesn't really provide mentoring anymore. It used to be for thousands of years, men always had mentors. And it's the idea that you don't really become a man until older men kind of initiate you into that world. And many of us, just feel like we're adolescents just growing up, but we're not really men. And so that was really interesting to me. And so I started participating in men's groups, and I'm still in one today. I think it's a terrific group. I know there are organizations all over the world that promote this kind of stuff. Men getting together to do special weekends, and it's quite provocative. And so, yeah, I put that. It's a very personal film in that sense. It's something I really was passionate about.
Mm-hmm. So would you say like the Tom character, because the way the movie, the audience is kind of Tom in the movie when you're watching it, because this is your first experience.
Exactly.
So is the Tom character kind of you when you first started to go to these?
That's interesting. The Tom character, played by Mackenzie Astin, who brother of Sean Astin, and many people have known Mackenzie's work over the years. Great actor. The choice was, to give an audience a real view of this is a little strange, a little alt culture, alternative, this men's group thing, was to bring a new guy into the group. And that guy would be our audience surrogate in a way. Mm-hmm. And we would sort of, as we watch the film unfold as an audience, it's a bit through his eyes. And he does, I think he's so great in this movie, Mackenzie Astin. He shows every possible color of kind of being game for it. Then something goes a bit strange and he looks like, don't know if I signed up for this. And guys are going extreme. And so you get all those emotions that we as the audience actually feel when we're witnessing these guys unfold in front of us. I guess I was a little bit like Mackenzie. Sure, there's a part of me that's like that, part of how I look at it. I'm a little more, because I have a background as an actor and theater person and, into psychology and everything. I think I was always very gung-ho about the idea of the men's groups, when I first got into them. But at the same time, reason I made the movie is because there are things that happen that are both really inspiring to me. That I see things happen between men and men's groups that gives me hope, for humanity, basically. And then there are things they do that are totally ridiculous, because men can be really stupid and dumb and ridiculous. And I think that we had to celebrate that part of it too in the movie. So that's why it's very much it is a comedy drama. It's a drama with comedy.
Yeah. I like that about it, because when the movie starts off, it's almost like I thought it was going to be a different kind of movie, where not necessarily making fun of the men's group, but kind of having fun with it. I thought, and then about halfway, it's about the halfway point, the movie really gets real, and And I thought that was a great part of the movie. And then from there, then it kind of goes back and forth from comedy and drama and does a really good job at that. But there's a part right in the middle where it gets very real. And I was like, then you're really sucked into the movie, I thought.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because that was really my vision of it, and also my writing partner as well, was that I was very clear. I said, it was very clear. I did not want this to be a common Hollywood satire of a men's group. I was very sure of that, because, I am a bit, preaching, I'm a bit part of the choir, and I believe in this work. I think it's important. But because I'm a movie maker and a storyteller, I know that has to be interesting and entertaining. And for me, that means it's got to be also funny to some degree. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to poke fun at ourselves, trying to be very serious, new agey things. At the same time, I don't leave it there. I say, no, this is real. This gets real. And I'm proud that the movie does that, because I don't make fun of that. I think that's very important, in fact, that men could open up and really share what's going on with them. So it does split the line there, and it has fun with it. It goes back and forth, like that was really serious, but in the next moment, something very funny could happen, And I believe life is kind of like that too.
Exactly. And like the movie's saying, to be honest with yourself, part of being honest with yourself is having fun with yourself, and kind of being able to laugh at some of the silliness about you or life in general.
Exactly. We can't take ourselves too seriously, or else, oh boy, who would want to go on with
it? Very true. Yeah. So actually, has your actual group watched the movie?
Yes, that's a great question, and many people do not ask that. So you're quite wise. During the course of my making the film, and even the writing it, my group, they were aware that I was doing that. And my partner Scott Ben-Yashar, my writing partner, he's also we're in the same men's group. So there was a little bit of that, like, now what are you guys writing about? Because, you better not be telling our stories, because this is anonymous. That's part of the culture of anonymity. You're supposed to, you don't share outside the group what goes on there. It's a very safe place. And, I assured them, and I still assure, that no, this is a compilation of a lot of different ideas. Certainly some experiences I have had, some are more fictionalized. They're amalgams of men that I've met over the years, and they're also parts of ourselves, parts of the writers. Mm-hmm. So I kind of tried to quell their concern about it. And then finally, when they saw it, I think that they were quite, tickled by the whole thing. They certainly did recognize certain things that they could relate to. Mm-hmm. And they might even say, oh, that's me for sure. Or that's this guy over there, But at the same time, they were aware it was a work of art, a work of fiction. It's not pointing at any particular guy. It's about the whole idea. Yeah. And I will say that they were all very supportive and very pleased and very, very proud that they were connected with it in a certain way, I think. Mm-hmm. So that was good.
So the cast itself, as you mentioned, is a great cast and a great ensemble piece. How did you cast the movie? And did you write it before you casted it, or are some of the characters kind of written for them?
So I'll take that as a sort of backside compliment, because the script was absolutely verbatim. Everything, we worked on that script for a long time to get it exactly where we wanted it to be. And then finding the actors that could give voice to those characters that we had really thought a lot about and tried to get their voices in the script. Finding those actors was a miracle, was a blessing. It was all those things that like a gift, that we got the guys that could really deliver this screenplay, this material. It was not written for them, but it was almost like it was. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. And it really came together that way. It was like, wow, they embodied these characters, and these actors committed to it, 150%. They, we did it very traditionally, Neil. We certainly went through a period where there was the typical thing about, well, maybe we can get this guy and that guy. And I was like telling everybody involved, that saying, no, we can't really, that's a game that you play in Hollywood of like, if you don't have the money to offer certain actors, there's no way that their agent will even give them the script. Okay, bottom line. And I have to say, there are many actors out there who are very angry because they really wish they had been in the movie, but their agents wouldn't even give them the screenplay, and that's typical. So I said, listen, we played that game. We tried to get, who and who's who. And that's all very nice, but let's just cast it. Let's open it up and see who comes, Let's the agents that will let their clients read the script,
Right.
And these guys walked in, many others like them, but we got the cream of the crop, Stephen Tobolowsky was the first guy I met. He read the script, he came down to meet me, and he goes, I love it. It's great. What do you want me to do? And I was like, are you kidding? What don't I want you to do? And I think at first he was not so sure that he was going to be Carl either. So I said, listen, go read it again, because this is what you should play. And he didn't bat an eye. He went, then I'll do it. And that, I'll tell you, your Neil is laughing, everybody, because
Carl's an amazing character.
An amazing character. This character of Carl, who lies to himself, lies to his friends, lies to his wife, and what he goes through in this movie to try to get honest with himself, let's put it that way, to be authentic, is unlike anything you've seen, I think, in a modern movie or any movie. It's really, he goes someplace that you don't expect, and he kind of blows the roof off. So, and we're chuckling because I want you to see it. And
yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, right?
We won't spoil anything except we can say that the movie does go there. So, if you look at the ads or anything about the movie, you'll say, oh, the LA Times did say it might just have the most full frontal male nudity of any mainstream film ever in the history of movies. And basically that's a true statement. Not that that's why we go see movies. And believe me, you'll agree, Neil, it's not gratuitous. It's part of the story.
No. Yeah, it totally works in the movie. Yeah. It's more, yeah. And it's not just, I was just saying it's more funny, but it's not even just funny. It's uplifting. It totally works in the movie. Along those lines, maybe a silly question. Was there any problems with getting the movie rated because of all the full frontal nudity?
No. Well, in fact, the movie, it's not gratuitous, and that's not it's so funny. A lot of people said when they read the script, they said, well, yeah, you're going to, we get it. They get naked, but you're going to shoot around that, right? You're going to just shoot above the waist. And I looked at them and I went, what, are you kidding me? You think I'm going to pull back?
Yeah.
It's an indie film for one thing, so I can do whatever I want. And as long as the actors are willing to go there, then we're going to go there. No, this was mandatory, and they had to sign a nudity clause and saying this is what we're doing, and you cannot back out of it if you agree. And but the point was this: is that people were like, but you'll the rating. I go, what do you think we're living in now? This is 2018. It's like, first of all, there are a couple of great movies out there that certainly go to full frontal, such as Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is one of Judd Apatow, one of the funniest I've ever seen, where Jason Segel is naked and his girlfriend's breaking up with him. It's funniest. I think that was a breakthrough moment in movies. So hilarious. And then more recently, had Viggo Mortensen and Captain Fantastic, and you can go down the line. This is not a new thing. It's just we're still very Puritan about it. We're still very American, which is to say we can see naked women, naked breasts, we can kill women naked and rape them on screen, and yet it's a double standard. We don't see a full picture of a men's nudity. So I had to really say this movie is going to change that if I can, and say no, we cannot shy away. And ultimately, everybody, shrugged and went, "You're right. This is a real thing." And I have to say, all the groups, all the screenings I've done in Europe, it's not a problem. Male nudity, it's not a thing. Everybody is naked, and they go to saunas together, men and women naked. It's not sexual, but in America, we still have that. It's taboo for seeing a penis. But so ultimately, not a problem, and it was just sort of funny to watch the reactions of audiences. Some just laugh, and others go, they're a bit shocked.
Right.
And ultimately, we didn't. It's not a ratings issue, actually the film is not rated, actually.
Right.
So
and not too much of a spoiler here, but actually what you were saying about when the cast was acting, you're not going to really show this and stuff. I thought it was shot great because to begin with, I did feel like there's like the tables in certain places and the couch, and that's how it was going to be shot. But then it slowly, you see more and more until you see everybody. And I thought the way it was shot, I thought it was great because it kind of gives you the hint that you're not going to show everything, and then you do.
No, we show everything, and there's even my favorite shot in the world is after Timothy Bottoms. Not to spoil the whole thing, but in any case, there's a shot of him walking down a hallway in his house and without a stitch on, and it's one of my favorite shots because it just shows a man in this big, ridiculous mansion. He's alone. His daughter has just walked out in a huff, and there he is. You never get to see that. It's like, that's real in a certain way. So, it's all done very, very authentically. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Where was it filmed? Because very big house and everything's very white.
Oh, yeah. So the location, first of all, the film was made in Los Angeles, which, in a certain way, this type of men's group is, more, it's not a surprise that it might come out of that type of culture.
Sure.
Which is, it's a bit liberal, a bit Jewish, a bit, a little bit mixed racially, but, not overly. It's speaking to that, part of the culture in a certain way. Mm-hmm. But the house, it was such a miracle to get this house, and I got it, because I begged practically on my hands and knees for this guy to give it to us, because the house had this is just behind the scenes now. This house had been a remodel that this guy did, and he was trying to sell it for like $7 million, in Brentwood in Los Angeles, and he didn't have a buyer for like a year and a half, and I think he was really on his pins about it, like, oh my God, I sunk all this money and I'm trying to sell it, and I just came across it searching locations. And so the house was staged for sale. Okay. No one had ever lived in it. Mm-hmm. And so it had all this great stuff. It had furniture and pianos, and it had been staged by the real estate company to sell it, and was pristine. And the guy said, like, no, I can't let you have my house. And I said, but, we have a very short shooting schedule. We'll be in and we'll get out and we'll put paper down on everything. And finally, I said, listen, even if someone were to try and buy the house, you won't be able to sell it for at least 6-8 weeks, be an escrow. And so I did my whole song and dance, and finally he acquiesced and he let us do it.
Yeah.
We paid for it, but, a big part of the budget, I might say, because it was the location. This is a house movie. Everyone should know. Mm-hmm. This is a movie that takes place on a single morning in a house and around the house. and around the environs of it, and very much like a play almost. And so we really, there are certain flashbacks and things like that, but mostly the whole action takes place. So the location was so important, and it was white. And I said, it's great. It's like this guy, who's played by Timothy Bottoms. He's mortgaged his whole life to like build this dream house. And he wakes up on this day and like his wife's not even there, and his daughter's nowhere to be seen. It's like, in a way, it's like this is the American dream. Like, work your ass off to have this big house and nobody's there. And it's sort of a feeling I have about that.
Yeah, and everything that it is so clean and white, it's almost like it's not lived in, even though he's in there.
Exactly, and his character is so obsessive compulsive about trying to keep it all clean and everything, because it's where he's put all his energy. But it's an amazing location, and it really worked for the film. Absolutely.
Different. Yeah. And who did the animation for, I forget how you pronounce it in the movie, but for Uranus, or however you guys say it, and the Cronus segment, when you're telling the story, because it's, kind of crude and stuff, but it totally, I love the animation for that story.
The animation by a really amazing guy, and his name is Brian Eng, and Brian. Well, let me back it up so people know what I'm talking about. So, in the movie, and welcome to the Men's Group, part of the idea we wanted to get into was about the importance of storytelling and how men use storytelling and mythology to understand. We all have, men and women, to understand ourselves, to understand where we've come from. The ancient myths, the Greek myths of Kronos and Ouranos and the Titans and the gods, those are all aspects of like our masculinity, our father issues, the wounds that are sustained from fathers and sons. I wanted to touch on that because storytelling is, and my character, who's this sort of college professor, initiates it. And people have heard that, like, oh yeah, in men's groups you like do drumming and you go in the woods and you tell stories to kind of reconnect with your masculinity and your ancient male. And in a way they do that even in this little, in this crazy white, they try to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, let's do animation. And again, this was another point when some people said, animation, this is like a movie, comedy, drama. You'll never get away with doing animation in the middle of your movie. And I said, no, it's going to work. It's going to be part of the story. And I submit that it does work. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting. And it's right at a moment when you've heard the guys talking quite a bit. And there's a lot of talking in this movie. It's mostly talking. And you kind of want to go somewhere. You want to get away from this room. And so the idea is go into the cave. Go into like the ancient cave where cave drawings were 50,000 years ago, and where men and women, of course, too, told stories about the gods. And they go into this kind of imagined space, we would say. It's like their collective imagination. And you see the story of the Titans play out on the cave walls as drawings. And it's it's one of my favorite parts of the film. The idea was to get into the original relationships between fathers and sons. And in the Greek stories, Ouranos, who's the sky father, has a son named Kronos. And they have basically a kind of tension between them. And eventually Kronos rises up and wounds Ouranos, his father, and tries to take his place in a sense. And these are archetypal issues between men and fathers and sons. And the idea was it would generate, a kind of provocation in the group so that they could talk about these issues that they have with their fathers, with their feelings. And so we did animation, and it just kind of blends. It goes right into it, and it's a welcome piece of storytelling. And Brian, I literally that way I found him, Brian Eng. I found him by looking on YouTube and saying, I want cave drawings, animation that look like cave drawings. And I looked around, and there was this little video that he had made as like a graduate project at school. Like I think he might have been at USC, I'm not sure. And it was like dinosaurs, and there were like shadows on a cave wall. And I went, oh, looks good, you know? Yeah. And then I sought him out, and I tracked him down, and I said, listen, I have this thing. What do you think? And he says, all right, let's give it a shot. And then we did storyboards, and I drew everything first in my crazy cartoon way. And then he started making images out of that. And we finally got it. And I said, it's got to have this rough look of the cave wall and firelight, you know. And he just pulled it off. It just looks beautiful, I think, you know. So,
I agree. It looked great. I was a big fan of it. And I think it totally works. It totally works in the movie too. You know, I like that style. I did some stone carving a few years ago, and I tried to have that kind of rough, old look to it, like something. And I don't know, it was fun. So it totally worked for me.
I'm glad. Yeah, I know. It's really. I love animation, and you know, I just thought, you know, we should definitely go for it, because it also, again, it speaks to. There's an image, and it comes back a few times in the movie, where you see these sort of masks on the cave wall. Yeah. And that whole idea, you know, what these guys are doing in this men's group is it's today, and they're sort of stumbling through it, and they're not very good at it, and they're making mistakes, but it's an ancient ritual, I think. It goes back thousands of years to our earliest ancestors, who basically connected with nature and with each other by telling stories and by meeting in council. And so the idea is that they're in this white sort of antiseptic house, but they're sitting right on top of the cave somewhere. You know?
Yeah, and it gives it a timeless feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. By the way, because that's a big part of the movie is the father and son. For you yourself, having a famous father who was an actor, was that hard for you to become an actor? Was it something that he wanted you to do, or was it something you yourself wanted to do?
No, that's a really great question. Just to let people in on that. So, yeah, I'm Joseph Culp, and my father was Robert Culp, who was a very famous actor and was in countless movies and television shows, including some really big ones. I Spy in the 1960s, Greatest American Hero. A lot of people know that one. He played the FBI guy. And even Everybody Loves Raymond. He was in that. And just he's a major, major star. And so I grew up in the 60s and 70s, you know, with him as this, you know, larger than life kind of figure. He was my dad, and you know, I knew we were, you know, he was my loving dad and all that, but he was, you know, really huge. And for any kid to grow up with that, it's a certain type of blessing and a curse to some degree, you know. Right. It's like, you know, the blessing is like, wow, my dad is like super cool and famous, and there's a certain kind of entitlement that goes with that. And for me to go into it, which was in a way, you know, a little crazy. It's like, you know, why go into the same business as your dad when he's so big? You know, how can you match that? And I don't really pretend that I can. I just felt that I was connected in the sense that I also had talent, you know, and it permitted me to think that I had talent, and that I was also passionate about acting, and I liked acting, and it was fun, and it was challenging, and it was all the things that I saw him do. So in some ways, I think, you know, speaking from the men's group perspective, you could say that I was trying to connect with my dad by becoming also an actor and an artist. Mm-hmm. And I will say that he didn't discourage it. He didn't encourage it like extraordinarily, because I think he knew how challenging it was. And he definitely set the bar, very high about acting, about art, about filmmaking. He was also a director and directed a lot, and he was a really prolific writer as well. Most people don't know that about my dad, but he was a very, very prolific writer, and he wrote a lot of the television shows that he did. So this was reaching for the Grail time, But he was supportive. He actually gave me one of my very first jobs, if not my very first, just to kind of bless me on my way, if you will, on one of his TV shows. So I got a gig from him, and but I went my own way, and you have to forge your own path as an actor. I think people looked at. I think when you're the son of somebody, they look at you and go like, well, okay, that maybe they think you're a little bit special, so we should take a look at you. On the other hand, there's that measure. Like, are you as good as him? Are you? And so in a way, you'd almost be better off not having that. So you don't have that kind of tension to work against. So I think it served me, and also was a challenge at the same time. That's the way I would say it. I studied theater. I went deep into training as an actor. It was something I took very seriously. And then eventually, by making films, even more so. So yeah, it was a rich kind of upbringing in that sense. I got to have that view of Hollywood that many people don't, which is can be good. On the other hand, like I say, it's kind of a funny balance, because if you don't have all those, if you didn't grow up in the industry or the show business, in a way you have no predispositions about it. You could be naive, and that could be actually a good thing, because it can mean there's no limitations. Instead of, I saw my dad, even though he was a huge star, I also saw him struggle, for in many different ways, whether it was trying to get a project on or with various producers or whatever it was. So that could predispose me a bit to the challenges of Hollywood, whereas some people just walk in from Nebraska and say, hey, I'm just going to be a star, and they do. So, it's a funny kind of balance there.
So how close is the Michael character you play in the movie to yourself?
You should inform your statements a little bit, Neil. It's like, who is the Michael character? Your audience doesn't know. So there are eight characters in Welcome to the Men's Group. They all represent, I would say, certain kind of archetypes, if you will, of men today. And different attitudes that men have, such as, one guy's, he's Latino, so he's got a bit of a macho thing going on, which he says he's really evolved and new agey, but in a way he can still get really defensive. Another guy is, like the Tobolowsky character. Why is he in this men's group? He's kind of a, he's a screw up, and he lies all the time. He's the businesses and they fail, and but he represents a lot of men that I've known, and even parts of myself about dreaming too much and not being in reality. But the Michael character, the one I play, we were initially even looking for other actors to play Michael, but eventually it just became clear to me that I should play him because I understood the material really well. He's a college professor. He's a self-avowed sex addict in recovery. So he has this whole thing about, I know I'm a sex addict. I had multiple affairs in my life. But I'm in my program. He's in the 12-step program, which is not the men's group, it's outside of it. And he's a bit preachy, and he's kind of the unofficial leader of the group. And that also kind of worked for me to direct. Since I was directing the movie, it was a bit similar in a certain way. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, we're going to do this now. That was very much Michael, as well as Joseph. Michael's story is not really my story. Mm-hmm. I relate to a lot of the stuff that he talks about, but it's not biographical or autobiographical in that sense. Mm-hmm. Actually based more specifically on other men that I've known, actually. Mm-hmm. But I do relate to the way he comports himself. He's very knowledgeable. He does want to push everybody to grow and to experiment and try these ideas in the men's group. And I do that. I'm a director. I'm also a teacher. I've taught acting, and I teach other body-mind work as well. So I'm very familiar with that sort of, passion about pushing people. Mm-hmm. But the idea that he's also blind to his own kind of advice in a certain way, which is really what Michael is ultimately what is revealed about him, is that he, is very good at sort of circumventing the truth for himself, even though he believes himself that he's very truthful. And that's tricky. But I would submit that most men experience that. I certainly, could say to have been guilty of that before. Yeah. I know a lot of men that have. And then the issue of his feelings of shame, I think, about his past or things he's done. That's not quite my story, but I do, I'm a man. I relate to grief. I relate to shame. I relate to all those toxic things that men go through. So yeah, it was, and I worked on it a long time, so I felt the material was really inside me in a certain way. So, mm-hmm. Not really like me exactly, but I brought myself to it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What was the reception like at the festivals?
Wonderful. That was, we can get into a whole discussion about, how do you release a film today?
Yeah.
An independent film. How do you get it released, and who's going to, how are you going to draw attention to it for people to see it? It's a really, really different world now. 20 years ago, we'd even go to festivals and get a lot of kudos and probably get a distributor to pick you up. And I have no doubt that that's what have happened with Men's Group. But we're not in that era anymore. It's not so easy. Most distributors, even if they loved your film, and many loved this film, they want you to pay for everything. So that old arrangement of like, well, the distributor will help, put it in theaters and pay for ads, and then they'll take it out of what we make. That whole model is just gone, because most people get their content on VOD, and distributors don't want to put a bunch of money into something where they are really have no guarantee anymore. Movies are not so much, actor driven quite as they used to be. That's really changed. So consequently, we did almost a year and a half, almost 2 years really, of just doing festivals and special screenings all around the world. And part of that was strategic too. It was like, well, I want to connect with the audience for the film so they're aware of it. And it's a topic film. It's a real issue-driven film. So that means people really want to talk about it. And then the best way to do that is to do it with a live screening. So we got to do that, and it was wonderful. It was like, I would say, I want to say overwhelmingly people were enthusiastic about this film. They thought, wow, it's speaking to issues that we just don't hear about. You don't see them on TV or movies. we're going into this private space with men and really seeing them get vulnerable, which is something you rarely see in movies, is male vulnerability. So people were really over the moon about it in festivals, and I'm only sorry we didn't play more, but that's a kind of a game too about submitting to festivals, and you spend tons of money trying to get into festivals, but if you don't have an advocate for that festival, it's very hard to get in. So the ones we did, we played about 6 or 7, and it was marvelous, really well received. Women in particular are just over the moon about the film. And that was kind of a big surprise in a certain way. I was like, I knew that was part of it, that women would be fascinated maybe by what we were going to show them about men, but we still couldn't really see what the reaction would be. And it was just like, oh my God, I've been waiting to see a movie like this about men, waiting, men are opening up and having these feelings, and it's like, it gives me hope about men. And I love that they get naked, because why not? Why should we be prudish about that? And it was just like, wow, we really hit one out of the park for women. Again, because I think, again, they're looking for men, that can speak on women love to talk about their feelings and be in empathy with each other. And men are usually just competing on some level. And it was refreshing to see this kind of film. So we got laughs, big laughs in all the right places, and some I never even dreamed. And also when the stuff gets serious, you could hear a pin drop. It was like, it gets really real, and the audience is totally there. Very few walkouts on this film. I dare say I saw, not even a handful. So that was really gratifying for me as a filmmaker. Yeah,
definitely.
And now you get to see it in the comfort of their own homes. But that communal experience of being in the theater, that's where I came from. That's where you come from. I'm sure it's like that's why we went to the movie.
Oh yeah, I just came from a film festivals for a little over a week. Buffalo Dreams, fantastic film festival. And to me, I love watching movies at home and everything, but there's nothing like watching it, not only on the big screen, but like you said, with a group of people, and you share the experience. And if you hear people laughing, it really adds to the whole experience of watching the movie.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really, it's funny, we say today it adds to the experience when in fact it really was the primary experience. That's why we went to, we wanted to see a story in this art form, to be with an audience, just watching it on TV. Yeah. So it's such a pleasure to get. I'm going to get to do it. I'm going to do a special screening in Marin County, San Rafael, near San Francisco, December 6th. And we're going to have a whole panel of speakers talking about men's issues and men's groups and authors and stuff. So it's a great opportunity for people to, especially today in the time of Me Too and Time's Up. This film is quite timely in that sense. It's really saying, men are out there trying to evolve and trying to explore and be better men in a certain way than what Time's Up and Me Too was all about. So it's kind of an important part of the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes people think what you just said there means like you can't really be a man anymore, but we said to be a better man. It's not necessarily masculine just to be like a grunt and watch sports and be nasty to women. This I agree with what you said about and it's cool that women not really dig the movie.
Well, it is. I mean, it's such an important issue. Is that all the men I know are not what, let's say, our baser natures or whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't know any men who subscribe to this sort of so-called caveman thing of just being whatever, sexually inappropriate and abusive and all that. Obviously it's still out there. That's still going on, but I don't know anybody. Why? Because we have evolved. We've already evolved. We're not the men. You and I are not the men that our fathers were or our grandfathers. We're hip to equality, if you want to even call it that anymore. Of course, it's like it goes without saying. Mm-hmm. And yet, we know that those attitudes persist, And so what I wanted to say with this movie is that men are much more than they even allow themselves to be, and that we have all that potential. We don't have to lose our masculinity. What is masculinity? We're not going to lose. We have to discover it, and to think that it's only limited to sort of heterosexuality or whatever, being strength and forceful. Masculinity is much more profound than that. It's a part going to get me going on the, it's a universal part of the energy or something, it's like there's feminine energy, masculine energy. It's all part of this universe, and we as men who are born male, we express that energy, and it's very wonderful and valuable and essential. Mm-hmm. This is not even a sexual thing. This is about, just who we are. So, it's, I think there's a lot of confusion out there, about what does it mean to be a man? And there's a lot of old prevailing attitudes that are antiquated in a certain way. And I think that's what the movie is trying to get at.
Yeah. And I also have to mention, because I believe it's just been added to YouTube for the first time legally, is Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. People can finally see it. And you are the original Dr. Doom. And I have to say, my brother, huge comic book fan, my older brother, and I grew up, look up to my brother. And he bought, the bootleg version, I have to say, years ago at Boston, like a Boston Comic Con, but there was no other way to get the movie at the time. And I've always said this, not just because you're here, but I still think that's the best version of Fantastic Four that's movie-wise.
Well, dude, you are not alone. What can we say? There's a whole wonderful documentary out there now.
Yes,
you saw it, called Doom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a wonderful. Marty Langford did it, who's out of Massachusetts, by the way.
I had him on the show. I had him on the show when it came out.
Oh, awesome! Great. Yes, we're not alone in saying that. Even in our humble, low-budget, version of Fantastic Four, I still think that film got it right in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. It was true to the spirit of the comic. It honored the origins, and it didn't try to reinvent so much that it makes it kind of a modern idiom or whatever. It's that my what I tried to do as Dr. Doom was to really embody, how he is in those comics and his kind of tyrannical and classical kind of demeanor. And what happened in the later versions, where they tried to make everybody kind of cool, and that just lost the fans. So there you go. It's the great irony is that at this point, the first version is still might be the best or the closest to.
I think it's the most enjoyable of them.
Well, there you go. That's what counts, huh?
Yeah. And
I got to see it once. Yeah.
You got to see it?
I've seen it many times, but I got to see it projected in a theater.
Oh, nice.
And it was St. Louis Comic Con or HorrorCon or whatever it was, and we were invited out, me and a bunch of the cast and the director. And the guy said, "Screw it! What are they going to do? Arrest us? Let's just show it." And they just showed it. For those who are missing the thread of what we're saying, the original Fantastic Four movie was shelved and it was never officially released, obviously. And so that means it was never officially shown in a theater either. And so this guy showed it in a hotel with a big ballroom, and it was outstanding. I mean, people just laughed and cheered, and it was like had a ball. It was just great. So some true justice there.
Did you were you familiar with the Doctor Doom character before you got the role?
I knew about Doom because I knew Fantastic Four a bit from my childhood. I wasn't huge. I was more of a horror, monster movie guy. But I liked certain comics, and I have to say Fantastic Four was probably the one I liked the best. And then here I am, years later, 30, I think I was about 30 when that came around. I was like, wow, Dr. Doom, are you kidding? And I went back down to the comic book store and I bought a bunch of old issues and started looking through it and okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm totally gonna do this. And it happened. I worked my ass off to be Doom and do it with as much, gusto, bravado as I possibly could. And so I didn't know a lot about it, but then I learned a lot about him and really got, and then I even inserted certain things, even in the performance, honor that, even if they were very personal, about Doom's story and about the history of what happened with him.
Yeah. So, when you first get in the costume and, after you're reading it and you're finding about Dr. Doom, when you first see yourself, dressed as Doom with the mask on, the robe and everything, the cape, what's that feeling like to see yourself as Dr. Doom?
It's kind of, it all came together quite quickly. They had to, I worked with the guys to make casts of my body so they could fashion the pieces, which they did, and the mask and the carving. And so finally putting it all together, that's really funny. I mean, I'm trying to remember that moment right now. And I think it happened on, the Corman soundstage when we finally, started to put all the pieces together and take a look. It was like, whoa, here I am. I'm really here. It was, the experience, which I've been quoted a few times, is that it was really difficult. It was really challenging. And I don't whine a lot as an actor. I'm down with like doing my own stunts or whatever. I'm a tough guy with that, But I have to say, this was like, this is before CGI and before beautiful,
Sure.
They weren't made out of rubber, let's put it that way. These were big pieces. They were made specifically for me, but they had to be fixed together. They were made of super hard plastic, and I had to wear all of that, plus the cape, plus the outfit, and his gun, and a mask, and a hood. It's like, oh my God, I'm really in this tin can now for every day for many hours a day, and I remember them. There was some footage, I think, too, of like them, trying to take little fans and push them up under my mask to try and,
to keep you
a little
cool,
bit, dry me out a little bit because I was just sweating like a horse under there, and it was really grueling, man. It was really tough, but I did what a good actor should do, which is like, all right, I turned my discomfort into the performance. I turned it into, his emotional life. I turned it into his rage, his anger, his desire for power and release, So I tried to kind of go with all those ideas because physically it was so challenging. I got used to it, of course, after a while. And I'm like, all right, back in the suit, here we go. And then I got a bit more free. But the big challenge there was how am I going to do this performance when I'm wearing, this encased in this suit? And for me, the answer was just to connect everything emotional that was going on and with the words to a physical expression. As I said, he has to move. We have to see his arms and feel his body in the space and the gestures. And I looked at a lot of the comics for that too. His incredible, the way he was drawn with this incredible imperious power. So it was all about gestures and, working through the scenes and finding, signature things that he could do that would tell the audience this guy is a big guy and he's powerful and he's trouble,
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean,
that was part of the mystery of it.
Yeah. I kind of know the answer to this, but all the hard work, and he said, you got to wear the suit and the hood and the mask and all these things, and then it doesn't get released. What is that experience like at that time?
I remember being disappointed, but not like freaking out about it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like I remember, like I'm pretty sure it was Ole Sasson, the director, called me and says, "Listen, man, I don't know how to tell you this, but they're holding back the film, and I think we weren't even quite sure what it meant yet. Yeah. I think at first I thought, well, they're just going to wait. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it was like really dead, like really over, like there was never going to be seen. Uh-huh. That I didn't quite understand for a while. So I think it kind of came gradual. I was like, well, all right, so it's not going to get released yet, And then he intimated, I think, in the time to come that, like, no, they're really not going to show, it's not going to get a release. Mm-hmm. But I think I didn't have to believe it. And then part of me just, protected myself. And I said, well, okay, move on to the next thing and just, so it's funny. It's like I know some of the other actors were absolutely, at least appeared sort of devastated by it. Yeah. But I didn't allow myself to feel that way. I was like, look, I did a good job. I did the best I could do. I did get a copy of it, a bootleg copy. And I was very happy. So it's not all over. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just kind of let it slide and, concentrated on other things and other jobs and then, as it went on, I think I just tried to put it out of my mind. I think mm-hmm. I didn't want to feel that kind of disappointment and depression too much. So I tried to put it away. Yeah. And then, within a few years, of course it became clear. But, you realize it took 13 years to make a big budget version, which is what their whole argument was. Right. Well, Constantine bought back the film from Corman. He's going to shelve it, and he's going to make a big budget version of the film. It was 13 years. It was over a decade before that came out. So mm-hmm. that was enough time to just kind of shrug and go, well, I don't know what's ever going to happen with the Fantastic Four. It's just a shame nobody's seen this thing. Yeah. And, so in a way you just, my life went on. I had my kids, and stuff like that happened, stuff. Yeah, of course. But the irony was that within a few years, it was clear to me that, it wasn't coming out, but more importantly, that the bootleg was getting around. And that was the real story. That's the story of this movie, is that more people ended up seeing this film than probably if it had ever been released. And that's a fact.
I'm pretty sure. Interesting.
I mean, I think hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have seen the film. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that if it had been released in 1994, whenever it was, it would have been out for some weeks and maybe wound up on TV. But I don't know that people would have seen it, even though it's a shame that it didn't happen. And mm-hmm. the bootleg, VHS went around for years. And then eventually DVDs started coming out that were better quality. It was like, okay. And then a guy I knew, an editor, who passed me something, and it was basically like the definitive DVD at this point. This was several years ago. Yeah. Marty Langford, and he would be fine with this because he told me so. We were at a convention recently. He made he did an up-res or whatever he did of the best version that he had, and he put it on a Blu-ray, and he has them, and he gives them away, like Robin Hood gives them away. Because it's like, if anything, we would love to provoke enough to say, then release the film. If you're upset that bootleggers are going around and you've lost money or something, then go ahead and make a release of it. Give us an official version. But as you said, it's on YouTube now. So happy days. You can watch it if you want.
Well,
and now millions.
When did you know it had like this following and the bootleg was going around? Was it like when you internet started, or how did you find out about
That's
people?
Really
watching?
Funny you should say that, because like when internet started. So yeah, this was before the internet when this movie was made, and by about 98, 99, when were we starting to do a lot of internet? Certainly by then, I mean, I was aware that certain people had it because I would meet people and they're like, "Oh, I have a copy. I got it."
Yeah.
But remember also that comic book culture, when we made the film, was not yet mainstream. It was still underground in a certain way. And then comic book culture began to take off with movies and just with other stuff. The advent of Comic-Con and all of that. And, it's like now comic book culture is totally mainstream. By that, I remember a moment in the early 2000s where, gosh, I think it was the first time when me and the other cast members were invited to a comic book store. Yeah, I'm going to say this is around 2005. Now, maybe that coincides with the fact that the other movie came out around then, I think.
Right.
The first big budget Fox version of the film of Fantastic Four. And I remember we were invited, and most of us went. I remember I went, and Alex Hyde White and Rebecca. And we went to a comic book store in LA somewhere because they wanted to invite us to sign some stuff and talk about the movie. And we did. And I think it was at that moment that we kind of realized, oh, it's been like 10 years and people have been watching our movie. and now comic book stuff is getting bigger. We're starting to get movies with big production values. And so I'm going to put it around then. I would say, somewhere between 8 and 10 years went by. And then we started realizing that, the bootleg's been out there for a long time. It's been circulating. Everybody knows this movie. And we're kind of celebrities in a certain way. And that's when we started getting invited to more stuff. And I did Comic-Con. I think I did it at least 3 times. And I was encouraged, like, please come and, and bring shots of Doom. And I had a lot of great stuff. I had a lot of great, I still have tons of great photography from the original movie that they gave me, proof positive that they wanted to release the film originally. And have a lot of that material. And so I would go and sign, and eventually it turned into something really kind of sweet, and kind of wonderful that people could come up to me and say, I watched the movie first when it was a VHS, then it was a DVD, and I love your version of Doom, really rocks. And, that was really nice to hear after all that time. It was like,
yeah, definitely.
Thanks. I busted my butt to do that role, and at least now people have a little bit of there's visibility in there, and they're expressing some thanks about it. So it was really nice, really nice.
Yeah,
my son became a big fan of Marvel, and he grew up with me as Doctor Doom. He knew he was watching it VHS since he was 3, and that was a big deal for him. And he had a little Doom doll, and he'd run around the house imitating me. And eventually, he even bought a really awesome mask, a metal mask.
Oh, sweet.
A metal artist made a Doom mask. It's awesome. Wow. It looks like absolutely perfect, and with a beautiful green cowl. And so Jackson, my son, made a cape, and we put together some other stuff. So we would go to Comic-Con and stuff, and he would go for it. He'd cosplay.
Yeah.
So my son cosplayed as his old man.
That's pretty sweet. And the Doom documentary is great. I recommend people check that out. I really dug that.
It's really well done. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do have to ask, too, because you mentioned briefly about being a horror fan as a kid. So I have to ask, what were your favorite horror movies?
Favorite horror movies? I really was raised on the original Universal horror stuff. That to me, was. I grew up in the period of, also in the early mid '60s. There was a kind of resurgence of horror movies, probably because of television was now showing them a lot. So Frankenstein, The Mummy, Wolfman, Dracula, all the biggies, Invisible Man, Creature, all of those guys. And along with that were the famous Aurora hobby kits,
Oh, yeah. My brother had those, passed them down to me. Yeah.
I was like a brother. I built every single one of them. My brother did too. And they were just fantastic and freaky and wonderful, and I spent hours working on those models and painting them and thinking about them and imagining those, the weirdness of those horror movies and the monsters, and as I got to see each one of them, and even older stuff, even the silent stuff, and I was a fan of Lon Chaney, and I used to get books about it, and Lon Chaney Sr. and Jr. and all the favorites. And I even, because I was fascinated by all those monsters, that translated into a love of horror movies, particularly, I think, older ones, and most, I wasn't a huge fan of like slasher stuff. That really wasn't my thing. That came later in the 70s. But a lot of movies up through even bad old horror movies. I'm a Riff Tracks fan and MST3000. And so I love old, even really what we consider kind of B movies and bad movies too, because I get a kick out of them and they're fun. So that's a big part. Godzilla, huge Godzilla fan. My son is an encyclopedia on Godzilla now. He has every single Godzilla. And so that goes on. And some modern horror, of course, I love too. Whether it's, Exorcist and Shining and Omen, all the classics kind of that came out of the 70s too, I really appreciate.
Yeah, mentioned earlier when I'm sorry.
Got. Buckles of my heart, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula. Those guys are reign supreme, and all of the litany, all the various incarnations, of those films. The five Frankenstein films, and all the different remakes and sequels.
Yeah, I agree. And when I mentioned earlier about stone carving in Hunter Mountain in the Catskills, there's a boulder up there with different But anyway, my Frankenstein monster that I carved into a boulder in Hunter Mountain, that's still up there. I've not finished it. I've gone 3 times once every year, go up there for a couple days, and someday I'll finish it. But Frankenstein.
Fabulous. Oh, that's wonderful. I hope you do. You gotta, Yeah, this last Halloween, as I'm in France right now, so I didn't really have access to a lot of movies or anything. It was always a ritual. My son and I would watch a lot. All during October, we'd watch like all the movies. That was like part of our thing. All the original Universal horror and a lot of others. And so I thought, what can I watch? No Halloween. Nobody really cares in Europe, Halloween's very American. So I thought, I think it's time to watch Freaks, Todd Browning's Freaks.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Watch like that'll give me a nice creepy feeling for Halloween. So that's what I did.
Yeah, one of us. Real quick, a few years ago, just real quick, a few years ago for Halloween, it was one of the coolest experiences I had was going to see the original Phantom of the Opera, the silent one, with a live orchestra in Boston. It was just an amazing experience.
Wow. I saw that. I saw original Phantom. Yeah, I was probably about 9 or something. There used to be a movie theater in LA called the Silent Movie Theater, and quite a couple of decades, it really did show just silent movies. So I saw a lot. I saw Hunchback there. I saw Phantom, some other old Lon Chaney stuff, and it's a big part of my inner monster culture. I really dig it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Joseph. It's been a great time.
Thanks a lot, Neil. It's really been a pleasure. You're a pleasure to talk to. I hope you give a plug to Welcome to the Men's Group. People will go check it out. It's my movie. It's you really won't be sorry. It's a fun movie. It's also very interesting about men today, and you can get it on iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play at the moment. And you can check it out. Welcome to the Men's Group, and the website is themensgroupmovie.com.
Yeah,
and friend us on anytime.
Yeah, and I'll have the link right on the website so people can click on it. And do you yourself have I know you have a website. Do you have social media people follow you personally?
Please, anybody who wants to friend me on Facebook, it's Joseph Culp and the actor, and I've at josephculp.com. I have a professional website, so you can reach me there, and feel free to reach out and share your story. And thanks again, Neil, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And I know it's been a little longer than a half hour, but I think it went well.
A little bit longer. We did pretty good.
Yeah, I think
All right.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Have a good day.
Take care.
Yeah, you as well. Have a good time in France.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.